Hey, fellow traders. All right, if you're watching this, that means that you've seen a post or an announcement somewhere regarding a brand new version of my TWAP indicator. So I made the TWAP indicator a couple years ago now, I think. And to me, it's one of the most important indicators that I've ever made for intraday trading based off of market breadth analysis, primarily for tick. So, like VWAP, tick weighted average price averages price based on tick breaks within the New York Stock Exchange plus minus 500 area. Every time that occurs, I average rolling price and present it with standard deviation bands very similar to VWAP. Personally, I find VWAP still very useful, obviously, but I find it to be soft, might be the right word. Once price just runs away from it, even with bands on, I find I don't see a lot of intraday opportunities to join in on a trending day. So I know a lot of traders like to use VWAP retests for trade entries, and I don't know if you look around a lot of intraday sessions, there's not a lot of those, unless it's a chop day. So, in my opinion, TWAP has a better edge on chop days than VWAP, and then even on a trending day, or even potentially a reversal day, and you'll see why. If you don't already know why, you'll see why here in a bit. I think it has edge on reversal days as well. So, without further ado, hopefully you already know about TWAP. You already know about TWAP ranges. That's why you're here. That's why you're interested, hopefully. But if not, I'll do my best to fill in some gaps. This is the next evolution in TWAP. I'm calling it TiWAP Pro. So, the first thing I'll cover is a couple quality of life changes. So, with the original TWAP, the session would start, and all of the plots from the prior day would kind of shrink up and slurp up to the top here. And to me, visually, it just was distracting, kind of looked nasty, and a little distracting. So I fixed that, and on the first bar of a new session, it's a clean break. You don't really need to see the values anyways, and a lot of times the values aren't anything, so you just see a clean break. So you no longer do you see all the lines being drug up to the new bar, and in my opinion, being very distracting. The next quality of life improvement is with the TWAP ranges themselves. If I pull back here on replay to the new session, the zones for all of the TWAP ranges of the prior day that are stretched over the new session, they are now fully printed and extended to the end of time until the session closes. They will remain fully extended. So to me, this is a huge quality of life improvement because the original and current TWAP ranges indicator just has these little dots, and you can't really see anything unless you rely on the price scale. So that's a big improvement in my opinion, and that's going to be part of the Pro series of TWAP indicators. I'm not rolling that back to any of the free tier indicators. So great. So we got a couple quality of life things, but is that really good enough to call this Pro? In my opinion, yeah, it is not. So let's go to the next thing. So the next thing would be data time frame. So for the internals data, you can now set it to a different time frame. This is largely thanks to TradingView adding in a lower time frame data lookup. And why this is nice, personally, is while I like the 2-minute time frame, it starts to reduce the resolution of tick data. So instead of in the span of 5 minutes seeing 10 different prints of tick 500 or 1000 or whatever, you might just see one bar of tick print. And so the average price of TWAP itself is going to be affected. So even on a 5-minute chart or a 10-minute chart, if we go back, things start to look less clear, and it does end up impacting opportunities. So we can switch this to a 1 minute and you watch, everything changes. See that? So to me, it's important. So that's a new feature that I'm so excited to release to everybody. It's going to allow you to use the time frame that you're more comfortable with. The 1 minute can end up causing a lot of noise, and faking out traders, creating opportunities where they don't exist. So this is going to allow you to stay zoomed down on time frame and see the bigger picture, but remain accurate to the highest granularity of tick data, kind of per how I would prefer it to be. So that's another key feature here. Another one, and these are on by default, is the dashboard. So over the last handful of years, I've had a couple of traders ask a lot of questions regarding how to use the TiWAP, how to use the TiWAP ranges, and what to do in certain situations. If you're in the Discord, you know that I've created market breadth analysis tool. I've created the free market internal trend tool, and those are all great, but they require you to sit there and observe and learn the information and kind of create your own analysis and your own thinking patterns and analysis patterns, like what to do with it. So this is my 10th attempt, actually, of building a tool that is as if I'm sitting there with you and giving you what I'm thinking in the moment. So as these bars are playing out in a live market situation, you are going to see, to the best of my ability, what I'm thinking based on how I've learned to trade with all of this, and a lot of the reason I built all of this and kept digging in on certain aspects of this information. All of this data that's here, you also have subtext or tooltips that explain everything. Okay, so the initial mode for this is actually called introductory mode, and it's supposed to teach you why I'm presenting the information that I'm presenting, not necessarily the how or what to do with it, but just the why is it even here. And so you'll see this to learn how to use the dashboard itself. So the first section at the top is the outlook row. It's very important. What are we doing here? So it's dormant because we have not received any tick. In my opinion, the New York Stock Exchange is not awake yet. Nothing's really happening. So we're just floating in space with no real momentum. And I think you see it in the price action anyways. It's not that price can't do things, but it's just not, it's not spicy. So that's why you'll see this dormant. Another key aspect is trade quality. So if the regime was something stronger, you might start thinking about a trade. Okay, well, what grade quality is the trade? So just like anything else, it's best to have a variable method to measure the market and determine how much risk you put on or not. So the entire idea here is we wait for the market to quote unquote turn on. So we're no longer dormant now, as you're observing, because we actually got a tick print. So our TiWAP bands appeared, and you'll notice now the outlook says balance, okay? And we're at a C quality. So that's not a very good grade. And we also have this next section. Why does this C quality balance outlook make sense? Well, it makes sense because we're one-to-one price breadth, one-to-one volume breadth. The ad overall is pretty garbage. So we're still waiting for rejection, and then we get the trade decision. So what should we do? We're looking for mean reversion. Okay, now we start to see B quality. We're leaning bearish. So what should we do? Okay, well, as things start to set up more, maybe we short somewhere back here. Okay, maybe I want to sell something here, see if I can get a fill. All right, so we got a fill. Where would I look to get out? Maybe I'd get out somewhere around there. Okay, and the whole time we're seeing things are speeding up. Cumulative tick is continually expanding into negativity. We're still leading bearish. We're at B quality trade. Okay, we're starting to see a lot of things. And this is actually a perfect day to review this because the ad is not very strong. Okay, the breadth value ratios are not very strong, but because of how we have formed the session TiWAP and where we're at on with regards to the TiWAP ranges, this is how I would kind of make something out of what might appear to be nothing. Okay, because we are technically still over my bias pivot of prior TiWAP. That is bullish, but we're under session TiWAP, which is bearish. So we're kind of wedging here. And because the ratios are negative, or the ad is negative, I should say, and the ratios are negative, then I would allow some shorts, okay? But it's a B quality, which is not bad, but notice it says that we're leaning bearish, not strong bearishness. We're just leaning bearish. So I'm going to get in and then I'm going to get out. So that's what this information shows you here. And then let's flip to the guidance text. Now that we're in guidance text mode, we can start to see a little bit more explanation for this data. So now it says participation is leaning bearish, but not broad enough to reward careless entries. Ad is near neutral, advancing and declining stocks are fairly even, and volume is helping sellers, but not pressing hard. Okay, so that's why we're red, but bearish. Okay, slightly leaning bearish, but mostly balanced. So it's a little nuanced. And this is the nuance that I have because I've watched this forever, and this will help deliver that nuance. And so that's why I would short right here where session TiWAP and this upper band might act as resistance for a leg down. Now, if I wanted to be greedier, I could wait to take my profits down here. But given the information and knowing that we've created this wedge, I'm not looking to be greedy. We're not A quality. We're not bearish with strength. Careless entries and careless exits, they're both important. All right, so the management section, so the trade decision. What's the best entry? Well, we're going to look for session resistance. So we might take another trade back up here, okay? And then if we get in, I could buy something there. So that's perhaps how you could set up orders. Notice they did actually get all the way down here. Now session TiWAP has actually moved. Oh, that was a nice one. Notice also the score is starting to increase. So here's the next part of, see if we can get in here. This is the next part of the TiWAP Pro indicator, is the lower histogram. So this is actually a lower study. I'm actually going to close this trade out. I'm not going to put it on. This is actually a lower study with overlays on the main chart. And this is for historical review as well as intraday monitoring, if you so choose. And the next part of this is regime markers. So I often mention regime, and I want to emphasize what regime we're actually in. Are we in a negative regime? Are we in a positive regime? And so one thing that I see, I'm going to try to scalp this TiWAP tap. I think I got in a little too late. Okay, so you could probably call that a careless entry, but okay, there we go. I'm counting on this bearish regime to continue for me off of, we're basically right on the main pivot here. And again, I'm not being greedy because we're still leaning bearish, B quality trade, and actually the score has started to come up. I think by here it was actually okay, but so we've got this historical review. This allows you to go back in time, replay sessions, and look at the dashboard, look at what it tells you about that any particular moment that you find. So those are all on by default. We've covered guidance text. We've covered the different sections of the dashboard. You can also color the session TiWAP as the regime histogram. And I did leave the plot styles open on a lot of things, so you can make this really thick if you want, and then you can just hide that histogram. If you don't want to see it because you've got this color here and you're good to go, then you can do that. So when you see the RF negative or positive, that's telling you positive or negative regime flips. The tick, so we get tick prints. I talk about those a lot in my old videos. Tick extremes, I want to see plus minus 800,000 tick breaks. We're going to see that here via this plus T, and there's minus T's. Plus T's show up in a negative regime. Minus T's will only show up in a positive regime. So it's just there, hopefully, to alleviate needing a bunch of additional breadth indicators. You technically probably wouldn't even need tick for this anymore if you're just relying on the TiWAP bands, because you got to figure TiWAP itself is pricing in the tick prints of 500 or more. So the probabilities are baking into the price action every time that occurs. The only things you need to care about are when potentially there is a buy program that initializes. You'll see it in the tick alerts that are right here. Okay. You also can see that maybe the market's going to start moving against you in a short position, so you can manage early. And you'll see readouts for any special events here in the dashboard as well. But of course, it might be better to, if you're in a trade, especially to just monitor the situation directly. For my mobile phone traders, there is a micro version of the dashboard, and you can also turn it all the way off if you want. I may try to enhance this to shrink it from a horizontal and make it just taller. We'll see what I can do there, but I think for now, this is where I'm going to leave it. There's also different themes. So the light theme burns my eyes, so I'm not going to load it. You'll just have to trust me. It does look, as far as light mode goes, it looks pretty darn good. There's a fun terminal theme. I didn't really go too crazy here, okay? But it's there if you want to use it. Then if we wanted, we can change the dashboard position. So it might be good for mobile traders. You can also change the text size if you have visual impairments or different screen resolutions. You can change this text size. And then I did add a regime smoother. Personally, I don't think I'll really use it. It's going to smooth out this information here ever so slightly, but it will add delay. So case in point, for here, this trade I put on, maybe I wouldn't have even put it on. I mean, I'd get this one still, but the regime didn't fully materialize as bearish until much later due to the smoothing. So this is going to be useful, I think, for traders that are on a very low time frame, like 30 seconds, 15-second time frames. Might be helpful when the market volatility spikes again. Well, we'll have to see. Let's see. I think I pretty much covered everything. The range. So another quality of life thing is for the past 2 years, I've been focused on plus and minus third deviation, but now we also have plus and minus fourth and fifth deviation, and that is because on gap days like this one, we're all the way up there. So there's a lot of days where we gap up, not a lot, but there's actually been a lot here lately. A lot of days where we gap above the plus 3 SD line, and we never return. Or if we do, it's real quick, like here, and then that's it. I wanted to see more deviation, so I'd have some kind of a target if I'm selling SPX spreads or whatever. So those are there, okay? And then, unfortunately, we still have days like this one, just recently on May 6th, where we're on the fifth deviation. We test it, and then we blast off. All right, for those days, there is now a new, albeit somewhat experimental, but very helpful thing. Range center mode. You can change this to recenter the entire range, not off of prior TiWAP, but off of new session, the open price. So now you can trade as if everything starts from here. Very useful if you just want the ranges and you don't necessarily care about the fact that it's prior value location. Still very useful in my opinion. And this is how, if you use my ATR indicator that plots ATR ranges, that's how it works. So I kind of brought that over here. One key aspect to note about that, it will change the scores, and then it will change the regime flags. It will change the dashboard readout intraday, because I take into account the location of price relative to these ranges. So you'll notice it's not a huge difference on some of these days, but so here we've got more of a chop readout on the regime filter. Let's switch this to anchor on the open. Let's see what it does. Yeah, so here it changes it somewhat more dramatically. It's still mostly chop, but just something to call out. And then there's some traders that like previous close anchor, so that's there as well. Let's do one last thing, and that is to show off something else I'm really excited about. So because we can read lower time frame tick data, we can now more easily, and in my opinion, with a lot more edge, present projected TWAP ranges from much higher time frames, like prior week TWAP range. Lots of really cool price reactions to the +3 and +5, all the different deviation levels. This would be potentially something you could use instead of daily, even maybe. I'm going to experiment a lot more with this now that I have this tool. You'll see from here, we can combine. We can say, well, what's the weekly regime? Well, it's bullish. Where are we at regarding the weekly ranges? And then I'll go flip to a different layout where I've got TiWAP Pro set up for in the intraday daily session and kind of trade with both of them. For example, the last 2 days of this last week, very choppy. And on the weekly, we can see a pretty drastic pullback from what was a solid multi-day bullish regime until Thursday. So pretty useful information. All right, so we got that. We could even go to monthly. And we're still using the 1 minute tick resolution, which is really important. Okay, so from so here we're on a 5-minute chart and we're looking at the monthly regime. I think I'm gonna squeeze it up to a 10-minute. And your mileage may vary on the lower time frame lookup. I'm at the top level for TradingView, and so I get a lot of lower time frame data that other people might not get. You may have to experiment a little bit and maybe try a 2-minute or even 3-minute data time frame for tick. It should still be much better than if you're trying to use a 10-minute time frame, for example. It will be much better. So here's this last month of April. Look at this bull regime. We get a negative tick print right off of that first monthly deviation. Just what a trade that would have been. Very useful information. And you can see relative to in May, relative to April's projected ranges, how we're kind of in no man's land. We have this massive range. The SDs are huge now. Very incredible. And then, of course, you get the dashboard readout. So you can see what's the regime we're in, what's the quality. You get all that same information as if I was sitting there assisting you on interpreting all the information. So now you don't have to look at the breadth ratios. You don't have to look at cumulative tick. You don't have to look at any of that. You can just come in here at a glance, see everything, maybe dig in a little bit on some of the information, and then sit back and wait. Okay, well, the last piece is the alerts. So you can set up the TiWAP Pro indicator and have it set up to alert you on any function call. Open-ended, you can set it to all kinds of things. I might even set these up right on the Discord so that everyone sees these. So I'm going to be experimenting with these. I'm really excited to see it. That's it, folks. This is the TiWAP Pro dashboard. I'm going to get this out to all my current supporters. I may experiment with doing a release individual purchase for this. Not quite sure yet, but thanks again for your support. Reach out to ask any questions, and I hope to see you on the trade floor. Thanks for watching.